Stephen, thanks for your time. You've obviously had an association with the club for about 20 years now. Let's take you back to the very start. How did you become a Rangers player for the first time?
It started for me at boys club level. I think that the system was slightly different, so I was playing my local boys club team, and I was quite fortunate that the coach of that team was actually a Rangers scout, and there was a lot of players there that we were a good boys club team, so a lot of the players were in training with Rangers kind of 3 times a week, so started at kind of 9-10 years old for me.
And Murray Park wouldn't have been just built around that time, so once that got built and you're into the academy proper, that must have been quite a step up for you.
It was, for me it was, at the beginning it was meet at Ibrox and we were training 3 nights a week, whether it was on the Astro next to Ibrox or travelling to Linwood in the minibus. That was my 3 nights a week, and sometimes a game on a Sunday. So, but just before Murray Park, I think I just started in and mixing with the full-time boys maybe the year or 6 months before that through work experience and different things. So I had the experience of travelling in minibuses to Glasgow Green to train and things like that. So I've been here a while.
Your first professional contract in 2002, that must be a great moment for you.
It was. As I say, I was in work experience just before that, and I had a rough idea that I was going to get offered a contract. So I'd been in and around the kind of full-time boys for 6 months previous to that. So that was a good learning curve for me under good coaches. So yeah, it was a good experience at that time.
So who were the coaches and kind of influencers at that time in your career?
I think if you go way back to the beginning, it was John Chalmers, Billy Duncanson, James Duncanson. I think James is still here and does a lot of work with the charity side of the club. So they were 3 coaches away at the beginning that had a big influence on me. It was probably more about the enjoyment of football, because they gave you that real joy. And I know it's a different setup now, but I was seeing them 3 times a week, and we weren't playing many matches, but training was always fun, and that's the way it should be at that age. And so they were 3 guys that had a big influence on me.
Big Eck was the manager, of course, and they were winning trebles and doubles. It must have been a great time to be around the place.
It was, but I was thinking last night, I go back to kind of being part of the club at age, say, 9, 10, 11. At that point, you were always getting to travel to cup finals and stuff, part of the official party. So you would meet the bus at the stadium, and you would get to go in the bus to the games and stuff. So I remember going to cup finals in '96 and things like that, and big games. And so I've had a lot of experience and a lot of good times in my association with the club.
Yeah. How do you look back in your academy days then, and kind of made you the player that you were?
They did, but even within that, I was speaking to my mum last night about it, because she remembers more than me. My memory's not that great, and she was telling me things like I'd captained the club for every age group, for under 9s right through to under 21s and reserves and things like that. So I don't really think about things like that. It's more that other people that kind of take notice of these things, and I've had a lot of setbacks along the way as well, but the setbacks are what makes you as a player. So again, really fortunate to be in the club for such a long time.
Yeah. Was left back always going to be your position? I know you played kind of left wing as well.
I think when I started hitting the kind of full time stage, it was always left back. I think previous to that, it was similar to every other young player. I wanted to be a striker and score the goals and things like that. But I think when you start to get more serious at under 13s, 14s, 15s, it was always left back, and not so much left wing. I think that became a thing later on in my career.
Mm-hmm. As you say, Alex McLeish gave you your debut 2004 against Hearts. You worked really hard for these moments. What's your recollections of that?
Mixed, because I was so nervous. I think I've spoken about it before when I think at the start of the game, I think we were sitting second in the league at the time, but if we won that game, it was a chance to go top. And I think Mo Ross played left back that day, and he was struggling a little bit in the first 15-20 minutes, and I heard Alex McLeish turn around to Jan Wouters and say he was going to put me on. And at that point, I think I was sitting next to Chris Burke, and the butterflies were going, but Mo actually settled down and started to play reasonably well, and we get back into the game. So at half time I wasn't thinking I was coming on, and then Jan Wouters gave me the shout. So I think I had that 15-20 minutes to kind of calm down when I was thinking I wasn't going on, and then actually getting put on, and you just go on and the game takes over. So that was another great experience. I think we ended up winning 3-2 and we went top of the league, so it was a big game for us that day.
And to make your debut here at Ibrox must have been a special moment for you.
It was, and I always say it's always about, for me, it was always my ambition to play for Rangers, but for other people, I think they look more into it. As I spoke about, my mum and my granddad's the season ticket, and he still does to this day. He doesn't make as many matches as he did previously, but as I say, for people like that, it probably means more to them at that stage, because for me, it's all I ever wanted to do, but it was so close for me because you're training every day and you're in that environment. So again, the game takes over, and the kind of emotions get put to one side. Back then, it was more so about winning. Even in the youth team and the reserve level, it was always about winning, and we were trying to win youth cups, etc. So I was kind of used to that pressure of winning. It was always something that was drilled into me for such a young age. So it was probably a normal environment for me to come into when you're trying to win to go top of a league, which was the priority that day.
What's it like being a young player that's not quite playing every week? But you were there for Helicopter Sunday, you were at Easter Road, you were around the team kind of early McLeish days as well. What's it like being around that experience?
It's all learning. Again, I've not got the best memory, but I think back then you're learning every single day, and you're learning how to be a Rangers player. There's guys there that coming for the top with the manager at that time, Alex McLeish, were driving standards every single day, and players like Barry Ferguson and Dado Purcell again driving standards and showing you what it takes and what it means to be a Rangers player, and that's something you've got to learn from. You've got to take as much experience for that as you can.
Did it help you guys like Chris Burke and Alan Hutton and Charlie Adam, etc., with your Ross McCormack, Mo Ross you mentioned before? Guys like that are kind of on the same journey as you?
It was, and at that time there was probably a good group. There was also guys like Stephen Hughes there as well, who weren't playing consistently, but they were in and around the squad, and that made that transition a little bit easier when you get around, and there's familiar faces, guys like Bob Malcolm as well, so there's always familiar faces there that made you feel a little bit more comfortable. Yeah,
you start to get more of an extended run in the team, 05-06, the back end of that. That must have been great to get a consecutive run of matches for the team.
It did, and again I think as a young player I was probably a bit naive when you think you make your debut, you think that's you're going to be in for the foreseeable future, but when I actually first made my debut I don't think I was ready for that prolonged period in the team. Probably more physically. I think the ability was always there, but just physically my body hadn't matured as obviously as the more experienced players, so there's a period when you go into the team that you know that you have to expect you're going to be brought out again just to protect you a little bit, so something you always want to be in there consistently week after week, but I think as a young player you've got to have a wee bit of reality check as well, and you're not quite ready as you think you are.
But then you get a start against Villarreal. I mean, my God, what an experience that must have been for you.
That's probably one of the biggest games I've ever played, and I think just in terms of the atmosphere that night was incredible, and I actually hadn't watched the game back until I retired, and you realise how big an occasion it was. But again, I've spoken about this before, when you're that age and you're probably naive and you think that it's going to be normal, you're going to play in the Champions League qualifying stages every single year, and for Scottish clubs that's not the case, so I was really fortunate to be involved in that.
How do you look back at your McLeish era at Rangers then?
It's a difficult one. I think I was coming into a successful team, obviously under a successful manager, and I'll always be grateful to Alex McLeish for giving me my debut. It's not easy at this club to give a young player a chance, and he was brave enough to throw a few years in at that point, so I'll always be grateful to him for that. But in terms of myself, I think it's probably to be expected. I think I came in and done well, and I'd spells out the team, coming back into the team, and you're competing against top players for positions as well, so probably went how I would have expected it to go, to be honest.
Obviously Paul Le Guen came in, domestic results weren't great. Europe was actually a different story, it was really good actually that season. But you played, Alan Hutton played, Charlie Adam played. That must have been a good time for a youth player at the club, because you guys were getting games all the time.
It was a good time, and again as a footballer, we know the results domestically weren't great, but as a young player at that time we were just desperate to play, and he gave us that opportunity, so and that gave me that prolonged period where I was in the team consistently. At this point I think I'd matured a little bit, and again he showed faith in me by keeping me in there, because I think when a new manager comes in, his first option's always to go and can he bring in his own players, but he trusted the young players enough to put 2 or 3 in at the same time. Again, we know the results weren't great, but that was a great learning period for us as a group as well.
I was going to say, when Ali and Walter came in, they said it's a heavy badge to play for. You've experienced highs and lows already at that stage in your career, so you must know exactly what that felt like.
It does, and I think when you make it to the top of a top club and one of the big clubs, it's always going to be the case, because there's always pressure on you to win, and you're not the only club that wants to win. There's always other clubs out there that are trying to get to that level, so you can't win all the time, and it's really good to have the experience of both, the winning and the losing, because I think you actually learn more for the defeats than you do for the wins, because you're so high. But I think the lows, it makes you think and analyse and reflect on what went wrong and what you can do better.
Obviously Walter and Ali came in kind of started 2007. That was a bad time for you, of course, because you picked up injury at the worst possible time, didn't you?
I did, and it was everybody was so excited about them coming in just because of their kind of association with the club, so it was a really difficult time for me. Obviously injuries, it's been a big part of my career, but another learning period, because it was so difficult to get back into the group, and when I did come back for the injuries I just had to keep working hard. That was the only answer, and I managed to be fortunate enough to work hard enough that they then put me back into their plans.
I guess you have to be mentally tough as well to get through that.
It is, it's a tough period, and it's not nice. I'll be honest, there was some dark moments through those injuries, and it takes big characters to come through them, and again I was fortunate enough to come out the other side, and I think that stood me in good stead for the injuries I had later on as well, because it wasn't just at Rangers I had these problems, it was throughout my career. Yeah,
but more positively, you still played a part, you still won trophies with the club, so good times as well.
It was good times, it was great times, and again I think it's a measure of a manager and a coaching staff when the players that don't play as often as they would like, that they still speak so highly of you, and there was a number at that point. I think in terms of even getting on the bench, I think when you looked at the stand, there was international players actually not getting on the bench and in the 18, so again they handled it in the right way, but that's a credit to the manager and the coaching staff, because they dealt with everybody with respect, and that's the way it should be.
Yeah, I think if you look at the UEFA Cup semi-final bench, and the guys that weren't stripped, like yourself, Lee McCulloch, Andy Webster, Chris Burke, Charlie Adam, watching the penalties from the sidelines, that shows you the depth of quality then?
It did, and again, it was that you're talking about top international players, but one thing that they players never did, I think, it's easy when players aren't playing. So we were going on European trips on a Thursday night and coming back, and sometimes it would be 8 or 9 years training. Not one player ever switched off, because they knew at some point you were going to be needed, whether that be for a league game or a European game. You were always going to be involved at some point, so you had to be at the top level of your fitness, and the standards of training never ever dropped.
You had to leave, of course, for the good of your career. Was that a difficult moment to take the step to leave, or do you think it was the right time?
At that moment, I thought it was the right time. Looking back now, I regret it a little bit, because I think that there was another. When I spoke to the manager, I think there was an option to stay in for another year, and I thought it was the right moment for me to go, because I wasn't playing as regular as I thought I should have been. But again, that was a decision that I respected the manager for. The players that were playing in front of me were in outstanding form, so it was really difficult to get in. I just thought I needed a fresh challenge. It didn't work out for me, so it's something that I don't necessarily regret it, but at that point I always thought it was the right decision, so that's maybe why I don't regret it as much.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, Sasa was such an important figure for the club, a cult hero with the fans. For him to play every week, he was so consistent, so it's difficult to get him at the team, wasn't it?
It was so difficult, and again, his form was outstanding, but not only that, he was a great guy off the pitch as well, so that makes it that a bit harder as well when the guy playing in front, he's not also playing really well and a top player, he's actually a really nice guy, so that made it that little bit more difficult. But again, that's the level of players that you're competing for, to try and get in the team, and not even in the team, on the bench as well, so it was difficult. But
you say you moved on, it was Norwich, Aberdeen, Preston, and you ended up in America. Tell us how that move came about.
It was actually Chris Boyd. He was already there, so he'd been there I think 2 or 3 months previous to me, and I was at Preston at the time, who, and honestly, I think they were struggling a wee bit financially, so I've tried to get players off the books, and it just came up at the right time. Chris Boyd phoned me and asked if it was something I'd be interested in, and I kind of jumped at it, so I went over and I played for a year, and actually get back enjoying football again and playing consistently week in, week out. And people talk about the level and different things, but for me it was more about getting that enjoyment back of playing, and it's something that I loved, and I would probably one of the best years I've had in my career. Yeah.
And then of course you ended up back at Rangers. How did that come about?
That's another one. It was actually, obviously the seasons run different, so it was I think our season finished just at the end of November, and I was back in the country, and I came in to do an interview for Rangers TV, and I know a lot of players, when they're getting through that point, they come in and train with the club. It's not something I was ever comfortable with. I didn't really want to come in, and once I was away I kind of wanted to keep that distance, but I was doing an interview for Rangers TV, and Alan McCoy walked past, and he asked me what I was up to, and he's like, "Oh, just come in and train," because I think Kenny Miller was obviously in the MLS at the time, and Chris Boyd, who were coming in to train, so I actually took him up in that. But at that point I was always thinking I was going back to the MLS, because I had an option another year, but that never materialised. I ended up training away, and obviously at that time the club had the transfer embargo, so there was discussions quite early about me coming, but the embargo kind of stopped it and put it in the back burner for a little while, so it was something that, probably fortunate I was in doing an interview for Rangers TV, but I think when I came in and trained, I obviously must have shown him something that he wanted to keep me around, so that's how that one happened.
Did it feel different when you came back? Because obviously so much has happened in the kind of 2 or 3 years you've been away.
The club at first didn't feel different. I think that the standard of player had obviously dropped from what I was used to, but that was normal. There's a lot more young players involved who, as I mentioned, that they probably weren't ready to play consistently week in, week out. There was some real talent there, but not ready to play week in, week out for a club the size of Rangers. So that's probably the biggest difference I noticed, was the quality of player that was training every day.
Mm-hmm. You did play your part though. You got the unbeaten season, and the second season wasn't quite so successful, but you still played your part in getting the club back to the top level.
I did, and it's not something, I get asked this a lot, it's not something I actually look back fondly on, because for me, again, I go back to being 11 years old and going to watch Rangers in cup finals and winning leagues, and at 14 and 15 I was one of the people that got to hold the Champions League flag in the middle of the pitch when they're playing against teams like PSV and Valencia and things like that, so that's always a club that I remembered, so it was quite difficult, and it's not a position I like to see the club in, but now I'm glad, and we're really fortunate that we're back at competing at the top end.
Absolutely. But you wanted to keep playing, you ended up down in Kilmarnock, Rugby Park. I know that was a great time for you there.
It was, again, I think it was 3 years, and it was probably the right move for me at the right time. I was at an age where, again, I had to go and play, and I still suffered from a lot of injuries in my time at Kilmarnock, but it was something that I became club captain, and I've maybe seen other things that you don't see at a younger age. You start to learn a lot more, and I was involved in kind of coaching the reserves down there at certain points as well, so I was starting to learn the game from a coaching side more at that point. So in terms of learning, that's probably the biggest thing I took from that. Being club captain, you get different responsibilities and things as well, so that was all part of my learning as well.
Did you always want to go down the coaching route? I know you've started your own academy now.
Actually never. I think I was 27, 28 and it's always experienced guys before that. It was the guys like Davy Weir and Lee McCulloch saying to me, go and do your coaching badges, and the first badge I went and done, I never thought I would enjoy that. I thought I'll just go, I'll get it and that'll be me, I'll have it. But I actually really enjoyed it, and then that gives you that little taste for it and you want more and more. So I then went and did my A licence and I get that as well. So it's something that at that age, again, you're 27, 28, you still think you're going to play for another 10 years, and in reality that's the right age to go and get these things done. And I was quite fortunate that guys like Davy Weir and Lee McCulloch pushing me to go and do them, so I'll be thankful to them for that.
Absolutely. But you weren't just a player, you've turned to the media side as well now, and you're on with Tom Miller doing co-coms. How much do you enjoy that side of the game?
Again, it's something that when I got asked to do it, I was quite nervous about it, because I spoke to a few people and they told me it was really difficult, and I still do find it difficult at times, and I'm getting used to it a little bit more now, but it's something that I really enjoy. I'm in a privileged position now where I actually still get to watch games and come to the stadium, and we know the fans can't get in at this moment, but it's something that I really enjoy, and Tom makes it easy for me. It's when I first came in, as I said, I was really nervous because it's something that I'd never experienced before, but Tom's made it quite easy for me. And I guess you look at games differently now. It's more analysis, isn't it, from a technical viewpoint? It is. I think that even in terms of co-commentators, and there's different styles. I think I like to look at the opposition and what their strengths are and kind of formations, and again, some people like that, some people don't. That's just the nature of the beast, but I quite enjoy looking at it from that point of view, and as I say, I like kind of thinking to myself, what would I do if I was a coach, what would I do if I was a manager, just asking yourself different questions. So it's something I'm enjoying. And you're back at the club now, it's come full circle, doing some work with the academy. How did that come about, and how much are you enjoying that? I'm loving it. I'm not in as often as I would like to have been. I think it's something that's been ongoing for a long time, and something actually since I retired I was speaking to Craig and everybody at the academy about coming in at that point, but I didn't feel I was quite ready for it. But now that I've got my licence, I think I'm in the position where I've been coaching for nearly 2 years now. I'm in the position where I'm a little bit more confident and I'm ready for it. A little bit different with obviously the COVID problems that everybody knows, but I think the club have been fantastic in dealing with the young players. Obviously first and foremost is the players' welfare and their mental health, but I think in terms of the Zoom calls and the master classes, and I've been so impressed with the whole academy, even though I've not been in the building as much as I would have liked. I think for the outside looking in, and the Zoom calls and the work that they're doing is outstanding. And it must be good for you as well. You've so much experience to pass on to the younger players as well, good and bad, which is probably important, isn't it? It is, and before I went in I thought that's one of the good things. I've got experience to everything that they're going to face, and then COVID happens and I've not got experience of that, so that's probably the one thing. And I know how difficult it must be for them training on their own sometimes, or if the sessions are regionalised, there's 3 and 4 players there, it can be really difficult. So it's a new challenge for me, and it's something that I didn't think I would be facing, because I thought every single thing that they're going through, good or bad, I'll have faced it at some point. But that's one thing that's kind of through everybody, but the club's adapted and the coaches have had to adapt as well. Yeah. RYDC, which I know you're a huge supporter of, they've donated about £9 million to the academy since 2002. It's incredible amounts of money to help development at the club, isn't it? It is. It's an outstanding amount, and again, I think everyone in the academy is grateful for the funds. And I think for me, getting into the academy, the few times I've been in, you see the stand and you see the quality of the pitches, the quality of the equipment. I think it's all down to RYDC, so I think the club will be forever grateful to the funding that they get, and it's a great partnership. Yeah, I know fans can't come to the games just now, but they always like to see young players develop, young guys getting their chance. Young Nathan Patterson's had a chance this season. You must be impressed with how he's stepped up. I have, and it's a name that I've heard a lot about. Again, I've not been fortunate enough to see him play in kind of the youth levels, but I think every time he's come into the first team, he's handled the situation really well. The one thing I will say is I think he's facing challenges, and I think to be in and around the first team with the standards that the manager sets on a consistent basis, I think he's always on the bench, he's always on the team sheet, and it tells me everything I need to know about the character of Nathan Patterson, because I think ability just gets you around to train with the first team, but the fact that he's been there for so long tells me he's got that bit of character as well that you need. Yeah. You've had a similar journey. What advice do you give to young players, or what kind of tips can you have for this type of situation? I would always, something when I was younger I always used to do was compare myself to others, not just other players at Rangers, it was always other players at my age that were at maybe Motherwell or St Mirren's and teams like that, and they tend to make their debuts a little bit earlier than what you do, and you start to get a little bit frustrated, but I think you can't compare yourself. I think you've just got to trust your own process. Sometimes you compare yourself to, I was the player in the position that never went out on loan, but I would see like Charlie Adam get out on loan and doing really well, and he would get his name in the papers, and I'd be kind of questioning myself, is that the right route for me? But I think your route will take care of itself, and don't compare yourself to others within the academy or at other academies. Yeah, you mentioned the training ground, the facilities to come in there and work every other day is fantastic, isn't it? It is. It's an outstanding facility. Again, I've been fortunate enough to be in a few times, and it's I see with the stand and the facilities, and the way it's all set up is outstanding. It's one of the best facilities in Europe at this moment. Well, Stephen, we've also had some fans sending in questions for you as well, which I'm sure you're looking forward to. Dave asks, what's your best memory of your time as a Rangers player? It's always got to be winning. That's the thing. I mentioned it was drilled into me for such a young age, and it's still with me to this point. I think winning trophies for the club should be every young player's ambition. I think the ambition should be getting the first team, but when you're there, you've got to want to win things. And again, I was fortunate enough to play in the Champions League, which is the highest level you can play at club level. So I think you've got to be ambitious, and you've got to want to play in the Champions League. And again, we're fortunate enough to be in the position where, through a lot of hard work for the coaching staff at the club just now, we could be at that level again.
Yeah. Barry says, my son's in SPL Academy at the moment, not Rangers, under 16 age group. What advice do you have for somebody at that kind of pivotal age?
It would probably be to commit to every single session, whether that's a recovery session, a training session, a video analysis session. You've got to commit to it every single day, every single session, give it 100%. Even now, if it's a Zoom session, you've got to commit to that. It's a little bit different, but you've got to commit to it, and trust the process. Again, I mentioned the different journeys and the different pathways. Trust your pathway, and everything will work out. If you commit to every session, your journey will work out the way it should.
Connor says, what was your relationship with Big Dado Purcell like, and any lasting memories of the big man? He was some character, wasn't he? I've
got loads, and he's just, as soon as you say his name to me, I just start smiling, because he's such a character. And I've said it before, I think he's singing. No, his playing style was brilliant for me. It was something that he sometimes drifted out to the left, and we kind of worked well together. But I think he's singing, the way he was off the pitch, will always stick with me more than the stuff on it, which was brilliant. But I just loved him as a character off the pitch.
He was a tall man, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Connor also says, your ambitions as a coach, would you like to go on and be a manager at one time in the future?
I think I mentioned players, and every young player that I coach, I always want them to be ambitious, and I want them to try and play at the top level as high as they possibly can go. And me as a coach, I'm no different. I know there's a long way to go, and I've got a long way to get there, and I've got a lot of learning and a lot of experiences to gain, and I'm fortunate enough to be in an environment with loads of great coaches every day that I can learn from. So again, I want to get to the top, but I know it's going to take time, and there's a lot of learning ahead of me.
Jamie says, Stephen, what's your thoughts on the Rangers European form this season, and how far do you think we can go in the Europa League?
It's a difficult one. I think obviously I've been impressed the same as everyone else. I think even getting back to the qualifying rounds, I think it was so difficult. I think it's 4 qualifying rounds. This year there was only one leg. You're a set piece away from if you go now, it's fine margins, and they dealt with it quite easy. And then you get to the group stages and they get drawn against top teams, and they've handled it, and they've made top teams look pretty average, if I'm being honest. So they can go as far as they want. I think the draw's been quite kind. I think they'll fancy their chances. So again, I think that gives out a credit to the coaching team, for the manager right through. I think they're coached really well, they're well drilled, they know the opposition's strengths and their weaknesses, and they exploit those weaknesses, so they can go as far as they want.
Who's your player of the year so far, and why?
I've got to go for Tavernier. I think there's been a few that have been outstanding. I think Glenn Kamara's been outstanding every time I watch him. He's in the form of his life. But I think just for James Tavernier, and it looks like a different James Tavernier to me this season. I think everybody will look at his numbers and they're outstanding for a fullback, but he's got a real drive and a real determination this year, and it looks like nothing's going to stop him getting to that end goal, which is obviously a trophy for him as a Rangers captain.
Also says, what's your ambitions over the next 5 to 10 years in terms of coaching?
To learn. Again, I'm in a fortunate position where I'm in now with the academy, and hopefully things get back to normal as quickly as possible while keeping everybody safe. But it's just to learn every day. Again, I'm in a position where I've not been given a specific team, so I'm not working with under 10s or 14s. I'm kind of going between age groups and learning from a lot of coaches who've been coaching a lot longer than me, and I've got a lot of experience to pass on, so I'm fortunate enough to be in that position. It's just about learning for me.
Fantastic. Nicky asks, the best players you've played with and played against. You have a lot of good memories, of course.
Yeah, I think Barry Ferguson's always the one that will stand out. He was, I think, I spoke about the standards he set every single day in training. That was the real eye-opener for me, how at it he was every single session, how determined he was to win a possession game, a 5-a-side game. If it was a shooting competition, it was those standards that he was driving every single day. So, and then obviously goes onto the pitch at the weekend and he's the best player by a mile. So I think he was all round, he was by far the best player that I played with. In terms of against, I think it was probably Riquelme the night for Villarreal here. I think I've spoken about it before again, he's the only player that I've never seen sprint. He just walked about the pitch, and the way he controlled the game, he controlled the tempo, and when he wanted to lift the tempo, it was always him that did it, not through sprinting, but his passing range, and he was just a top class player.
Charlie asked, which players did you like watching when you were growing up?
It was when I remember last night when I was kind of looking through things that I've spoke about waving the Champions League flag in the middle. I think Bayern Munich at that point, when they were playing here, they had a left back called Lisa Razou who was outstanding. So I can remember early memories of watching guys like that and Roberto Carlos. And then the older I got, it was more your Ashley Coles and people like that who were at one point Ashley Cole was probably one of the best left backs in Europe. So, and then obviously you had Arthur Newman at that point playing for Rangers. So I was quite fortunate that I had someone so close I could go and watch every week. And then I was fortunate enough to train sometimes with Arthur and get little bits of advice from him. So I had a kind of 3 or 4 left backs I always used to watch from a young age right through.
Yeah. Tom Miller says you're a joy to work with on Rangers TV. Don't know how much you paid him for that. How much do you enjoy that side of the game? I know we touched on that earlier.
Again, I go way back to the beginning, and when I first spoke to Tom about doing it, I was really nervous because it's something that I know isn't easy from speaking to ex-players that are involved in that side of the game. And I say Tom's made it easy for me, but it's something that I really enjoy doing it. I really enjoy watching the opposition. I like sitting the day before and going through stats and watching how the opposition play and things like that. So it's a side of the game that I really enjoy.
Paul says, tell us about your time with Portland Timbers. What was the experience like? It must have been a great lifestyle for you as well over there.
For me, it was what I needed at that time, probably in my life. Again, people speak about the standard. The standard was actually, I wouldn't say it was outstanding, but it was a decent standard for me at that point. And I think the whole atmosphere around MLS at that time was really positive. You had guys like David Beckham in at that time, and as I say, there was a lot of positivity. And for me, it was exactly what I needed. It was just a year going, playing, enjoying football again. And even over there, we speak about training facilities. The training facilities there were excellent as well. So it was a really good environment, a really good positive environment, which was what I needed at that moment.
Tracy, a Kilmarnock fan, says she loves your commitment and passion when you're at Rugby Park, and the fact you got the captaincy, that must have meant a lot to you as well down there at that time.
I did, and obviously we spoke about this a minute ago, but I think it's something that at that point in my career I really enjoyed, and it was the responsibilities that came with that, whether it was speaking to the manager more regular, and at that time I think it was Lee Clark, he was really into the captain coming in and having a leadership group, and that was a new environment for me. And then obviously I added the coaching side into that with under 20s, so it was a really good learning moment for me. And then obviously Lee McCulloch got the job when I was kind of involved in watching games and watching players and things, so it was a really enjoyable time for me, and the captaincy helped that.
Final one, looking back on your Rangers spell and your other career away from here, anything you would change, anything you would do differently?
No, I don't think so. As I say, there was that moment where I left to go to Norwich. At that moment, that when I look back, I wouldn't say it was a regret. It was something that I felt as if I had to do. I had to experience other environments, and when I look back now, I wish I'd taken another year here. But it's not so much a regret. It's just at that moment in time, it probably was right for me and the club to part ways. But when I look back now, I'd probably wish I'd taken that other year.